Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about Mystic Champions, right? And it has been a while since I revisited my top 5 kind of like champion list. It has been over 6 months and we have already went through tech, skill and cosmic classes. They are uploaded on the channel, so if you wish to find them, just go and check out the latest videos that I have posted. I'm sure you can find them. And before we get any further, I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that this is my personal subjective opinion. I do not at any point try to claim that I have some sort of ultimate authority or the best judgment when it comes to the champion rankings. All of these rankings are obviously subjectively affected by my own personal experiences, by the stuff that I have seen, by the games that I have played, so on and so forth. And these are the conclusions that I personally have arrived. I'm not trying to insist in the idea that this is the most accurate champion power ranking. That being said, we're gonna be doing actually top 10 today. I'm gonna cover spots 6 to 10 at the very end of the video quite quickly, but in this case Mystic class has been getting so many more new champions that I think that Mystic landscape in general has been altered significantly. And if I were to shout out 5 current best champions in the Mystic class, I think I would be doing a disservice to everybody by not acknowledging the capabilities of the champions who are unfortunately pushed out of the top 5 or just didn't quite make it up there as they were released. Now, that being said, we're going to start off with spot number 5, and spot number 5 is a Symbiote Supreme. And quite honestly, he almost didn't make it. He was almost swapped out for the champion that is going to be in 6th place. The reason why he is still in top 5 is because when he works, he works. I don't think I would be kind of like making a controversial claim saying that Symbiote Supreme is extremely niche champion, and every single fight for him to be effective has to have both of the conditions kind of like fulfilled. Opponent has to not be bleed immune, or basically those bleeds and debuffs need to be able to apply. And second of all, obviously there has to be at least significant or substantial amount of buffs involved for him to shine. Now, if you're taking him up against a champion that do not generate any buffs at all whatsoever, he's going to be extremely underwhelming champion, even if he can inflict those bleeds. And additionally to that, he's a champion that greatly benefits from Mystic Dispersion. He's, well, you would argue that he's dependent on Mystic Dispersion, as well as quite frequently Mystic Power Boost. However, the reason why he is so highly regarded by so many in the community is the fact that when he works wonders. He is quite often like the best answer for a lot of the problems, and he's quick, proficient, and relatively simple and straightforward to use once you have done it so a couple of times. That being said, I'm not the biggest fan of Symbiote Supreme, but I can certainly understand why plenty of people do like him, and he has maintained his relevance still. Every single chapter there are plenty of fights where he can come in useful. He's obviously 6.2 champion counter, one of the best at that, so on and so forth. So every single time a significant piece of content comes out that isn't restricted to specific classes or whatever, typically you will find a fight or a couple of fights where this guy can do absolute wonders, and that is to be respected, even if it's not a day-to-day, everyday champion. But when it's needed the most, he's there to answer the call. And yeah, that's why he's in the 5th, mainly because of the amount of matchups he actually works great for. Is significantly smaller than vast majority of the Mystic class, but when he does work in a matchup, he works significantly better than vast majority of the Mystic class. Okay, that being said, we're going to move on to spot number 4. And spot number 4, I'm going to be going on a limb here, and I'm going to be placing Sorcerer Supreme, because I have had her for rank 5 for a while. I have brought her in Labyrinth. I have done actually quite a bit of testing, and in every single piece of content, I did like her. The problem with Sorcerer Supreme and why not that many people might be overly excited about her is that she doesn't shine in short fights. She needs a bit of a ramp up. She needs to be able to get to that level 3 and then start throwing level 2s. But the things that I value extremely highly in Sorcerer Supreme, first and foremost, has to be that healing on the block. That healing on the block just bypasses so many different troubles when you're dealing with crazy attacks, stacked opponents. You can just take the entire combo in the block and regen fully for it. You typically finish the fights with the full yellow bar, and you can just block specials, which would normally significantly damage you. And it's just a very, very kind of like reassuring way to find that you do not necessarily have to intercept. You can just block bait heavy attacks for days. None of it matters. She's going to regen it all back, and that is completely different from anything else in the game. That feeling that you not only kind of like hardly taking any damage, especially in armor phase, but because she is taking damage, but the fact that you can see your health bar just filling back up and you can walk away from these heavy punishing attacks without taking any damage at all whatsoever. Super useful. Additionally, obviously, access to slow debuff. Slow debuff, in my opinion, is like currently the most useful debuff in the game, because Kabam always loves throwing all sorts of different unstoppables at us and different evade mechanics, so on and so forth. And her being the only champion in Mystic class who has access to slow, therefore she is also one of the very few champions in the game that can slow skill opponents, which is also quite significant, because mainly all champions, most champions that has access to slow debuff are science class, and you cannot slow an opponent that you have class disadvantage up against. And just having that extra utility, extra variety where Sorcerer Supreme can cover an entire class with that slow debuff that most of the champions can't is absolutely fantastic. I think we have Sorcerer Supreme that can cover basically the skill class, which Science class can't cover. And then we have Stealth Suit Spidey. Those are like the only two champions that can slow skill champions. But anyways, all that being said, obviously there's still the armor break, still the ramp up potential, still the nullify, still the gaining of power, power stealing, and all the other good stuff. And the more I use her, the more I like her. And I was meddling about with her in Act 6, and yeah, vast majority of the fights, even like matchups that you wouldn't like consider too much. For instance, you can bring her in against Iceman. She has increased energy resistance, and during the course of the fight she just regened the entire damage back, so she finished with a full yellow bar. And yeah, very simple, very cool, and I think she's going to be really kind of like utility and versatility tank, not to mention a slow champion. So I currently place her as the 4th best Mystic champion, above Symbiote Supreme in my personal opinion. And we're going to move on to spot number 3, and spot number 3 is going to go to Magic, because Magic, well, Magic has always been one of the top mutants. She had drifted quite a bit lower in people's kind of like wish lists for a while, but then the Flow War started and many things changed, and obviously Magic was pretty much the MVP for Flow Wars. And with Flow Wars now kind of like shifting possibly into Stubborn Wars, because there is a good chance that Flow might still be dominant defensive tactic. But anyways, even against Stubborn, she's a champion that's absolutely fantastic and great, because she has fantastic power control. She has Limbo, where you can heal up a lot of block damage. And basically, once you get your first level 2 off, you can make sure the opponent just doesn't throw any more special attacks, and make the entire fight extremely simple. So I think she will serve greatly to everybody against Flow and against Stubborn. So that all being said as well, she is finding more and more use in Act 6 now that more people are actually kind of like ranking her up and bringing her in there. And overall, I'm happy. She's obviously one of the kind of like old school champions that's been out for a very, very long time, withstood the test of time, and in my opinion is regaining its relevance extremely ferociously. And yeah, I don't think how much more I can say about Magic. She's extremely satisfying to play. That power control is arguably the best power control in the game, with basically a permanent power lock on the opponent. And even if opponents like debuff immune, for instance, you can still power steal plenty, and then in exchange spam your level 2s quicker, so on and so forth. So yeah, very simple champion, but very effective and very elegant in my opinion. And don't even want anything changed about her. I think she is a champion that has a perfect identity in this game. Everybody knows what she does, and what she does, she does it the best. And yeah, that's Magic. That's why Magic is spot number 3 for me, and I'm super excited because I absolutely love Magic as a champion. Now, spots number 1 and 2, I don't think it's gonna be too surprising. Spot number 2 is gonna go to Black Widow Clairvoyant. And one of the best things about Black Widow Clairvoyant is obviously the fact that she doesn't rely on Mystic Dispersion pretty much at all whatsoever. And additionally, the fact that she can handle Suicide Mastery so well, and that even arguably enhances her. And that is a very rare trait in between Mystic champions, because vast majority of the Mystic champions absolutely suck with Suicide Masteries. And if you are somebody who's running Suicide Masteries frequently, or most of the time, then arguably Black Widow Clairvoyant is pretty much the best champion for you, because she's a champion that fits with that setup the best and still manages to answer a lot of different problems. She can nullify buffs, she can place a buff immunity debuff on opponent, which basically automatically nullifies all of their buffs, plus prevents them from gaining new ones. She can power steal, she can life steal, she can deal bursts of damage, she has access to bleed, poison, and incinerate debuffs, and yeah, and all of the immunities as well, bleed, incinerate, and poison. And there is a certain kind of like learning curve to be had with Black Widow Clairvoyant to kind of like get comfortable with her, knowing which curse to go when for, how to kind of best benefit from the best. But all of those things being said, I think she's an absolutely fantastic hero. I use her quite frequently, whether it is in like Act 6 or it is in Alliance Quest or somewhere else. She's definitely well useful. And yeah, the pure fact that she synergizes so well with Suicide Masteries and doesn't rely on Mystic Dispersion pretty much at all whatsoever is just so fantastic, which is one of the main reasons why I love her so much. And I definitely consider her to be one of the kind of like top dominant Mystic options. Now, again, as I said, if you are consistently running Suicide Masteries, then she's arguably going to be the best Mystic in the game for you. Because even though I don't think at this point, when we're going to talk about spot number 1, which is Dr. Doom, nobody's going to deny it, right? First things first, he doesn't handle Suicide Masteries too well. You can use him in a fight or two with Suicide Masteries, but that's going to be him done. But the sheer amount of fights and matchups that he does handle, the sheer amount of tankiness, which often lets you kind of like get through the fights, and all of the crazy combo wombos that this guy is able to do, I think he is fast becoming as one of the face kind of like Hall of Fame champions of MCOC, just like where Corvus, Ghost, and Quake is, and where Scarlet Witch and Thor and Doctor Strange used to be, so on and so forth, because he's shaping the game as it is right now. New Alliance War season started, and he seems to be completely unleashed there as well, absolutely taking control of the new map. He has been obviously invaluable in Abyss of Legends, and the matchups that he can handle extremely well. He's one of the four horsemen, and he has been really great in Act 6, and there's just such a large amount of things that he can handle with his shock immunity, with his tankiness, with his passive stance, with his stance after level 3s, power control, the incinerate debuffs, and yeah, there is no doubt that Doom is most dominant Mystic champion we have seen in a really, really long amount of time. Like for a while, we only had like Magicka and Symbiote Supreme as the spearheads of Mystic class, for instance. But in this case, I think Doom is a really kind of like high and above the rest, and he is also like one of the best champions in the game, not just the Mystic class. And that's worthwhile, because we didn't have that with Mystic class for a really long time. When we were talking about the, like, I don't know, top 5, top 10 champions from 2016 to 2019, halfway, Mystic class was hardly ever represented when you were talking about best 3, best 5 champions in the game. And Doom's up there now. Doom is up there with the best of the best, just because of the way he plays, the amount of matchups he handles, how tanky he is. And yeah, so he's absolutely fantastic, and certainly capable of some crazy stuff. And the best thing about playing Doom is also that you are playing with your opponent rather than against your opponent, if that makes sense. Because once Doom has his game plan set, it doesn't really matter what the opponent does. It's just kind of like Doom throws a special, Doom okay, then you have to either have to parry opponent or bait a heavy attack or something, but then you basically push yourself 3 bars of power. Once you get out of level 3, you just drop your medium, light, medium, light, whatever combo, and then you drop level 1, then you drop level 2, then again you kind of like parry or block bait heavy attack, you get to another level 3. So there is this entire kind of like rotation, and the entire kind of like circle doom goes on, and you pretty much take opponent out of the picture, and it's just such a fun and satisfying playstyle. So yeah, Dr. Doom it is. Dr. Doom is the best Mystic in the game. We're not going to argue that now, but I did promise you guys spots number 6 to 10, and so we're going to quickly start at 6, and I think it's Mojo. I still think to this day that Mojo is underestimated extremely heavily as an offensive powerhouse. I do believe personally that he might as well have made it in the top 5 list, and there are plenty of reasons for it. The only reason why he didn't is still the occasional impracticalities of him triggering his prompts, and there having that a randomness aspect. For instance, when you go in stun immune matchup, you might be asked to stun the opponent, which is obviously impossible, but there is a way for you to change the prompt, but again that would require you to throw a heavy attack, which again is extremely tricky in stun immune matchup. So there are obviously some inconveniences and issues with Mojo, but overall I think the fact that he is a champion that gives buffs to his opponents whether they want it or not, and then causes them to degen, the fact that passive degen is pretty much the thing that nothing in this game is immune to, because opponents can have debuff immunity. He doesn't care, his degen is passive, and he places buffs, not debuffs, on opponent. And then opponents might be able to shrug off debuffs, doesn't matter, there is no immunity for degeneration, so on and so forth. Though every single champion in the game, with the exception of Gladiator Hulk obviously, is susceptible to this passive degeneration, and I think that makes him special. That is extremely valuable. He's a Mystic champion that, yes, benefits from opponent having buffs, but he gives opponent his own buffs, so he has a large amount of matchups that he can perform extremely well in. His damage output is up there with some of the best, and the fact that he is in a unique position where he's able to passively degenerate opponents like pretty much nothing else in the game. And yes, I know people will be commenting on Omega Red, so on and so forth, but you guys know what I mean, that he actually places degen debuffs, and we can argue there are very few champions in the game who has that going for them. But yeah, the passive degeneration I think is still underlooked, and Mojo is definitely a champion that I would like to take up to rank 5 in quite soonish future, because I do enjoy playing him to begin with. He's really fun. He certainly has a great defensive value, but overall I see a lot of offensive potential in him as well, and I wanted to put that out there. And not to mention, again, he's a great 6.2 champion counter and what have you. So after Mojo, at spot number 7, I would rank up Morningstar. Now, Morningstar is not a champion for me. I think that Morningstar is arguably one of top 3 for Mystic champions once she's ramped up, because she's insanely tanky, she's great. She can steal stuff, she can nullify stuff, she can cheese stuff, bleed immune, and there's a lot of things that you can say great about Morningstar. The problem is that I personally believe that her ramp up process in particular is pretty much the heaviest in the game, where you need to get to level 3 for like 3 or 4 fights in order to unlock the true potential of Morningstar. And that is typically what something that I'm not like really prepared to do. That also requires you to have the access to level 3, which often can be tricky, so on and so forth. So that ramp up to me kind of like kills the enjoyment of the character. Obviously, once she's ramped up, I absolutely love her. She's one of the best incursions champions. She's great for a lot of stuff in Act 6. She has been used extremely well in AQ and AW and so on and so forth, and she's more like quote-unquote a cult champion, where she has a very, very loyal following, and you can definitely understand why. And my reason for not being a part of it is just, yeah, I do not like that ramp up. I think it's too steep of a cost to use this champion to its fullest, to ramp it up and drop that many special 3s, and if she's not ramped up, well, the fights are hard. But yeah, Morningstar would be number 7. Number 8, I would put in Longshot, because I think Longshot arguably has one of the best damage outputs in the game. I recently made a full-on video breakdown about Longshot, all of his great stuff and all of his weaknesses. The reason why he's so low on the list is, yes, that you have to meet a lot of very specific conditions in order for him to be able to fully open up. You need to be able to throw heavy attacks, you need to be able to drop your level 2, opponent cannot be Incinerate immune, opponent cannot shrug off debuffs, opponent cannot do this, that, and that, and that, and basically there's a lot of conditions for you to actually unlock Longshot. And as I showed in that video in particular, when you go in, for instance, Act 6 in a map, you will be lucky if he's going to be suitable for maybe one of the 6 paths that you typically find there. So I think when he works great. He's kind of like a Symbiote Supreme. When he works, he can work really, really well. But unfortunately, there are far too many matchups and situations and conditions where he doesn't really work all that great. All that being said, I also think that people underestimate this guy defensively. I think he's also a very powerful defensive champion, and people should realize that quite a bit more, because his animations are tricky, and his increased power gain based on your bad karmas can be extremely problematic to deal with. If you combine that with increased power gain or something else, then especially so. Okay, 8 is Longshot, 9 is going to be Voodoo. Where is Voodoo? Because I believe he's making a resurgence as well, because as I have mentioned in several videos previously, Kabam is focusing on Cold Snap, Shock, and Incinerate immunities. Less and less characters that have been coming out in a recent couple of years have been poison immune. And that obviously opens this entire door for Dr. Voodoo. Not to mention that Acid Wash has becoming more and more noticeable presence in Model Construct champions. And all of the good things that made Voodoo good, but kind of like made him also drop off the map. For instance, he used to be a great AQ champion, but then these robots came out of nowhere, and obviously robots were poison immune. I mean, the Ultrons, drones, or whatever they were. But now you have Doom bots that you can poison again, and again, most of the new champions can be poisoned, so on and so forth. So just by sheer kind of happenstance, when we have more and more targets that Voodoo can poison, more and more champions that have buffs active on them, makes Voodoo automatically kind of like a better champion. Similarly to Archangel, for instance, because there are less bleed and poison immune champions being released recently, which means Archangel has more targets, which means he can move up the rankings. And yeah, and 10th spot I honestly can't decide, because as far as I'm concerned, Ghost Rider, Man-Thing, and Hood. So we have Ghost Rider, Man-Thing, and Hood for the spot number 10. You can pick your favorite, because all 3 of them are fantastic, and all 3 of them could be fantastic. The problem with all 3 of them, however, is their damage output. I cannot realistically consider properly using any of them in any serious content because of the lackluster damage output. Maybe not so much in terms of Man-Thing, but definitely in Ghost Rider and Hood. And if they would receive some sort of boost with their actual damage output, then they could certainly rank quite significantly higher. However, currently I think they are kind of like battling out for spot number 10. All of them are good, decent champions, but just not quite up there, and largely falling behind because they just cannot throw decent enough punch. But anyways, that is about it. Sorry for keeping you guys so long. If you made it this far today, then here is your baby Yoda. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, then do let me know, and I will catch you guys soon. See ya.